book launch day. And my guest today is Jennifer Lynn Simpson. Jen, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Jen. Thanks for asking.
Oh, I always just, I don't know what it is about this moment where we get to kind of sit here and celebrate and kind of talk about your book and the important work that you're doing and the meaning and impact behind everything. So it's like one of my favorite moments as a publisher where we get to actually just sit here and have a conversation where other people can witness and observe. So thank you for being here. And this is your latest book.
It
So
is.
yes, we've got some visual aids today. So I just want to dive right into it and just have you kind of share just super high level what the book is about. And then from there, I'm going to ask you some other questions.
Absolutely. Thanks. Well, the full title is The KOAN Method: Breakthrough Leadership for a Divided World. And I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that we've got some big conflicts going on all around us right now. And I think it's so easy to feel like, where does one even begin? Sometimes the sides just feel so far apart that knowing where to start, how to enter into these conflicts that can feel so intractable can just feel really out of reach. And so this book is really about reimagining how we engage in those conversations. It recognizes that we've spent a lot of time investing in growing individuals, authentic leaders, purpose-driven leaders, conscious leaders, but we haven't really evolved our systems to keep up with that. And so I think we're seeing the breakdown of that dynamic all around us. And it's really a call for people who are trying to build that better future that we all aspire to try some different things, because the ones we're trying aren't working all that great.
Yeah. And so you also have a business that is, working in the space. So can you tell us a little bit about your business as well?
Absolutely. Integrated Work is 25 years old. We just had our anniversary in April, and I'm the second owner of the business, and so we have been women owned and women led since 1998, which was pretty unusual at the time. We were putting statistics together on how many women owned businesses have survived that long, and there actually weren't statistics in 1998. No one was even tracking the question. And so we don't really know. But, our business is focused on working with mission driven leaders and people who are really out to make an impact from the very beginning. And over these last 25 years, we've really built a team that loves to partner with people who are building that new way. And so most of the work that we do is facilitating people really coming together, sometimes across organizations, around these sort of sticky problems and trying to, find new ways through and create those breakthroughs.
I love that. And it's, your subtitles Breakthrough Leadership for a Divided World. When you were putting this book together and really thinking about the impact that you wanted to make in the world, what was it about the kind of the phrase using divided world? Because I feel like there's so many different ways that you could have framed that, but you specifically chose divided world. So I'm curious what the logic was behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is just this feeling that I certainly have, and that so many of the people I talk to have, that everything just feels broken,
Mhm.
right? That it feels like there's this chasm between us, wherever we are standing, and some other set of ideas or opinions or perspectives. And I think most of us both get that we can't build the future we want alone, and that just doing it from our own vantage point isn't going to get us there. And at the same time, figuring out how to engage with people who have such, deeply entrenched and often vastly different perspectives to our own is really challenging. And so I guess I wanted to give people hope that even in the face of those divides, breakthroughs are possible. And when we feel the need for those breakthroughs more than ever, there's a method, there's a path that we can follow, and we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing is that we don't have to do this alone. And I really have appreciated that it is divided world because I think what that does is it acknowledges the divide, but it creates a bridge between
Mhm.
that divide because it's not making one side right or one side wrong. It's saying like, listen, we're all part of the problem and we all have to be part of the solution. So I just really appreciate how it's framed because it easily could have gone in a lot of different other directions where you're almost alienating or polarizing people unintentionally, and we need all sides to actually create these meaningful solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, I think it is the divide. It's the notion of a divide that's the problem, right? It's seeing ourselves as separate. It's feeling like one side should come out on top. When the reality is that if we take that sort of win lose model, there are always more losers than winners, right? Whenever you set up that kind of dynamic, you're just creating a world where more people lose more of the time, and so that means that even if you win today, you've got a target on your back tomorrow. And so that effort to sort of stay at the top of the power pile just becomes a driving force unto itself. And that doesn't build the world that most of us want to live in.
Mm-mm. No, not at all. And so for someone who's watching this right now, what it like if we think about the places that people get stuck, right? Because like you're talking, like I feel like this is broadly applicable. I don't think it really, there's no, it, regardless of organization, industry, size, like this is really applicable, I think, for anybody. But when somebody's kind of just feeling like they are stuck in the mud and they want to have that breakthrough, like what is just even any basic wisdom you can kind of pull out of here to say, here's something you can do to take action right now today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two things. I mean, the first most fundamental is to really start from curiosity, right? When something occurs to you as, so startling or surprising, you've got that sort of recoil feeling like, where did that come from? How can you even think that way? To sort of interrupt that impulse to either pull back or like armor up and fight and say, what's going on over there? Like, what is it that has you see the world so differently than the way I see it? What's underneath that? Because generally it's some very human experience or emotion. It's fear, it's care for our community, it's some set of values that was given to us early in life by the culture that we grew up in. And we don't want to make those things wrong, right? Like those are the things that actually create a rich tapestry of human life. What we want to get curious about is why do we need to feel so separate in that, right? Why is it so hard to find that path through? And so I think the other piece of that equation is that it can be really hard to access curiosity when we're in reactivity. And so I think the other piece that I really talk about is how do we create containers of care for ourselves and for each other? How do we really recognize the need for healing around some of this work? That, when our most primal brain gets activated and we get into that fight, flight, freeze, fawn kind of mode, our thinking brain, our creative brain doesn't actually work anymore, right? When we get in reactivity, all we can think about is, am I safe? And from that place, we actually lose access to the kind of creativity and wisdom and imagination that is the birthplace of innovation, that is where creativity is born. And so learning the practices that help you recover, calm and clarity in the face of disruption is really what allows us to, lean in a little bit in those places where we might otherwise want to lean back.
Yeah. And if we think about, I feel like some organizations are inherently kind of fostering these conversations and creating this culture where people can be thinking about what additional resources may they need in order to feel secure or safe. Psychological safety in the workplace is obviously a really big thing. So I feel like some organizations kind of automatically, I shouldn't say automatically, have worked very hard to create that kind of environment. So if somebody is in an environment where that's not really, it's just not, it doesn't feel accessible or attainable right now in this moment, is there something that they as that single individual in a larger ecosystem can do to kind of start to push the needle in the right direction for everybody?
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of this work starts at a very personal level. It can't stop there, but really there's inner work, there's, work in small groups. And so long before I was leading an organization that was doing this work, I recognized that I needed my own community, that I needed to go find my own people, as it were, right? Like people who were equally devoted and committed. And so I would say if you don't have this readily available in your workplace or in the organizations that you inhabit day to day, think about your friend groups, think about volunteer organizations, think about other places where you can find people that will both be that, helpful mirror for you as we're recognizing our own blind spots and doing our own work, but also be a little bit of a community of support because something's just hard, right? And it's really helpful to have someone tell you that, no, you're not crazy. It is actually hard, or to give you a pat on the back on a day when things didn't go that well. I really think that finding community is really important. And different people will find that in different places. And then at a personal level, I mean, there are all sorts of ways to do personal work, right? Whether it's, therapy or exercise or, your spiritual community, whatever that looks like for you, really learning to recognize what your own, triggers are, right? What is it that gets under your skin and has you go into that sort of reactive defensive mode? How do you learn enough about your own patterning that you can discover the strategies that work for you to interrupt that?
Yeah. Oh my God. There's so many different directions I feel like I could go in this conversation. I want to pause for a second to just acknowledge that you are giving a book away currently
I am. Yes.
while we're chatting. So I'm going to drop a link into the comments for everybody that has a bit.ly link that they can click on that can help them sign up for the book. So I'm actively putting
Fantastic.
that in there now. So wherever you may be watching our conversation, in theory, a link should appear. Okay.
Thanks, Jen.
So I want to just kind of switch us a little bit to, because I feel like we are talking about so many things that orbit the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Like so much of this, I think a lot of times in organizations is maybe sometimes it's the catalyst to being able to have these open conversations to say that, somebody raised their hand to say, hey, we as an organization or we as a culture have some kind of, we have a problem that needs to be addressed. And I think some of this stuff kind of stems out of that. And then other times, clearly it stems from different directions. But I know that you do a lot of work kind of in the Jedi space. So can you first define what the acronym of Jedi stands for those that might not know, and then just kind of share a little bit more insight around that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So JEDI stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And we like to put justice right up front because it both really serves as a reminder for ourselves of why we do this work. This isn't just about being nice and, having people feel good. It's really about creating an environment where the rich tapestry of human experience gets brought to bear on decision making and problem solving. And, again, is really that birthplace of innovation and creativity. And we all know that just, changing the names or faces around the table isn't enough to produce that quality of outcome. And so we've really put a lot of energy into thinking about what does it take to create the conditions both where diversity can flourish, but also where the potential of diversity, for all of the individuals involved, but also for the system, can really find its full expression.
Mm. And this is my statement, not yours, but do you feel in any way, because I part of me feels like your book is almost like a Trojan horse, where you're coming through the lens of, all right, so we're on the same page. Breakthrough leadership in a divided world, which inherently has everything to do with the Jedi space, but yet it is framed in a way that feels non-threatening potentially to that organization or individual person who might be feeling threatened by kind of this movement that just keeps gaining more and more momentum.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a, I completely resonate with that observation. And I mean, there is a way certainly that people who might not naturally pick up a diversity book might pick this up and get some benefit out of it that has, real value in the DEI space. But I think even beyond that, for people who might be the ones picking up those DEI books and really thinking about how to create inclusive environments, really create transformational, more just environments, I think there's also a message in there about, really recognizing that what creates the conditions for creativity and innovation is creating these, KOAN stands for kind, open, adaptive networks. And so kind environments aren't just like nice, polite environments. They're environments where we create the conditions where we can really tell each other the truth, right?
Mhm.
Where we can be in deep, meaningful conversation with one another about sometimes hard things, right? Openness is about creating transparency and voice, right? Creating opportunity for people to really bring their perspectives forward, and creating the conditions of trust, both where people feel like if they speak up, they're not going to be smacked down, but also where leaders are really open to having their view, challenged, disrupted, transformed by different perspectives, right? And ultimately, again, that's where new ideas come from, right? If we're not open to different thinking, we will never be smarter than we were when we walked in the room.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, really the fundamental message here, that if we want to come up with new ideas, we've got to create space where our existing, deeply, strongly held beliefs can be challenged, right? And where collectively we can craft a new understanding. I'll pause there and see what else you might want to follow up on.
Oh my God. This is my problem in life is that I just end up having way too many thoughts in different directions that I'm like, focus, let me drill down. Where my mind went just now when you were talking, because it just your passion for this work is so apparent in every conversation. So, right now, like I feel like your passion just kind of oozes out of you in terms of like just your commitment to this work. But even on calls throughout this publishing process, like you're just so laser focused. And there's something so beautiful about how that kind of shows up in the world that my mind just went to if you go back in time, however many years prior to, being the CEO here, did you ever imagine yourself to be sitting in the position that you're in right now and being the author of a book like this book? Like, was that part of like a vision board or a dream or, like, because it feels like it's just in your DNA?
Mhm. That's a great question. I mean, I I don't know that the vision board would have had like this book and this moment at this time and exactly this way. And it's absolutely true that this is a natural extension of me and my life and my work in the world, right? I've been doing this work academically for 25 plus years.
Mhm.
And it's really been my life's work for much longer than that. I grew up living across cultures and really learning from a very, very early age that the world's just bigger than me and that there isn't a single right way to do anything, but that as humans, we tend to care about the same things
Mhm.
wherever we go. It's just that the ways we separate ourselves look really different culture to
Mhm.
culture. And I think for me, that's a big piece of finding our way through to something new and different, recognizing that it's that active separation in many ways that's the source of the problem,
Mhm.
and figuring out how to honor the dignity of our shared humanity while also acknowledging these vastly different lived experiences that we've had, down the road, around the country, around the world, that the fact that we've all led different lives and seen different things is part of what will allow us to
Mhm.
imagine different things together. But if we start from a place of there being a right way or a best way or a more noble way, we close ourselves off from learning a lot of things that might help us, see a solution that we can't see our way through to right now.
Yeah, and I think that's what's beautiful about having something like this where there is a method, where there is a process, there is a framework to be able to kind of move from one state of being to a different state of being where you're gonna be able to see that positive influence and that positive change.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So we have the B Corp community in common. And
Yes, we
so,
do.
which I love so much, and any chance I get to talk about it, I would love to. And so I'm curious because like with B Corps, like there is a mandatory like there is an expectation that your company is going to do behave, act in certain ways and advocate in certain ways, and put people and planet before profits, and just all of these just really amazing things that make for quick pithy sound bites, right? But then there's the actual act of including that within who we are in our companies. And I feel like I love, like, I just have any conversations with people who are part of a B Corp, and it's just a different conversation. So I'm curious what your, like, how for you that kind of came to be on your radar, because again, it just feels like if you hadn't been part, I'm like, how, like, to me it'd be like, how are you not, like, it just seems like, how could there not be a reason that you would be connected? But I'm curious how that all came to be, because I feel like it's all kind of wrapped around this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, I've been a student and scholar of alternative models of leading and organizing for a really long time. And so B Corps have been on my radar almost since the beginning. And, it's been really exciting to sort of follow this path, right? From, a small group of people who are like, hey, I think there are other people out there like us who are trying to do this too. What if we had a scorecard that we could all use to see how we're doing relative to one another?
Yeah.
And now it's really become a global movement. There are, almost 7,000 B Corps worldwide. Um, we went through this journey from 2021 to 2022. We became an official B Corp at the end of last year. And so that work was very much happening in parallel with sort of the scaffolding or the architecture for the book. And I mean, we really have been working to build integrated work as an organization that models these principles. And what I appreciate about the B Corp community is that it both does create that public scorecard. Anyone can go on, bcorporation.net and look any of us up and see how we're doing and see sort of how we scored relative to a whole host of different criteria. And so there's a way in which it really honors that openness, right? That transparency of putting your money where your mouth is, of really walking the talk and saying, these aren't just our values. It's not just pretty words on our website, but here's how we live this in practice. And I think what's been exciting for us is, we started the process of self-evaluation a few years before we started the process of applying to actually be certified. And so those tools really helped us say, how are we doing on pay transparency? How are we doing on salary equity? How are we doing on the diversity of our team? Are we volunteering as much time as we want as a community? What are the other things that we could be doing? And we had to make some choices about what was enough for this first round of certification and then what else. And so I think that's the other exciting piece for me, is that it always calls us, and now my team really has a mindset toward what else could we be doing here. But it also, again, reminds us we don't have to do it alone, right? That we get to be part of this global community of other people who are also really trying to answer those same questions.
Yeah, and I think that's where your book to me is such an obvious and natural tie-in, because you're right, where there is this scorecard, and some companies just inherently score higher in certain areas just based on existing practices in place, and then there's other areas where there's a little more concerted effort that's necessary to really kind of take it to that next level. And I feel like your book is kind of this beautiful foundational kind of place for people to be able to look at it and say, what are the possibilities? What can this truly look like? And I think that, to me, when I hear the word breakthrough, like, possibilities is also kind of on the other side of that word. And I think that's what's
Absolutely.
beautiful about kind of the B Corp space, because I feel like, I don't want to speak on behalf of all B Corps, because obviously that's not fair, but the ones that I know and connected to, and myself personally, there is like that constant striving for doing better and being better for everybody that we are touching in whatever way that looks. And so I feel like your book is a beautiful, beautiful addition for that whole community.
Thank you. Yeah, and part of what's exciting to me about this moment in history is how many people are really in experimentation mode, right? I love the Buckminster Fuller quote that if you want to change things, don't fight the existing reality, build a new model that makes the old one obsolete.
Mhm.
And that's what really lights me up. And it lights me up to see other people. I mean, Patagonia, which is maybe the biggest, but most well-known B Corp, is really blazing the trail, right? They've declared the earth as their only shareholder.
Yeah.
They've put the entire profits of the company into this perpetual purpose trust. They've
Mhm.
created a foundation to really administer how funds are spent. And
Amazing.
so you can look at these, very large, for-profit entities that could be doing lots of other things with their money and their
Mhm.
resources, who, Yvonne Chouinard said there were no good models. And so we made our own. And that's exciting to me, right? I want to work with people who are like, there aren't any models out there I want to follow. Who wants to blaze trail with me?
Mhm.
That's where the exciting work is happening right now.
And it can happen in any industry, and that's the beautiful thing.
And it can happen from the tiniest, I mean, this could be your school board or your
Mhm.
PTO or, your kid's soccer team,
Yeah.
or it could be your, solopreneurship, your tiny little business. Or, I mean, there are examples in the book from, global 1,000 big corporate
Mhm.
entities also. I mean, the reimagining has to happen across all of those dimensions.
Mhm. And it doesn't matter if you're 50,000, 500,000, or 50,000,000. Like, not like that's none of that's relevant. It's really going back to your one of the original things you were talking about is like curiosity. It's reimagining, it's looking at the possibilities, it's being curious of what else is out there and not just accepting the status quo because it's like we don't have time to be accepting the status quo at this point.
And I think for some of us, recognizing, I've been reading lots of fun things recently about what it means that Gen X is in positions of power, right? Like we're
Mhm.
this tiny little sandwich generation, right? That, have been sort of waiting our turn for boomers to transition out, right? Lots of baby boomers who thought they were going to retire in 2008 or 2009, like stayed on because of the global financial crisis. And
Yeah.
some of them are still there. And my goodness, I mean, have poured their hearts and their lives into building, systems that can and are enduring. And we've got this window of time where, those of us who are in our sort of 40s to early 60s have seen some things, right? Have often spent a lot of our careers being the first or the only, or
Mhm.
really, working in small ways around the edges to change things. Well, now some of us are in positions of influence and power. We get to decide what we do with that,
Yeah.
right? Are we going to continue perpetuating the experiences that we had just because we lived through them? Or are we going to say, okay, from here, now what? Right?
Mhm.
And how do we invite the next generation of leaders into that conversation so that we're really helping them to imagine the future they want to lead and leveraging the resources, the power, the influence that we have to help build that tomorrow that they, will get to carry forward.
Yeah, I love that. I've also been down those rabbit holes too. I find it really fascinating of just kind of like what the future of the workplace is going to look like based on which generation is in a position of power or influence. And so it's really kind of interesting to observe. And I think it does kind of go back to this idea even that there's like a lack of tolerance now. Whereas before it's just like you had this job, whether you liked it or not, you kind of just moved your way through it to a place where you got a pension, you could retire, you could be on your way. We attracting employees at this point, like everyone I know, like the majority of my friend group are business owners too. And so it is really hard to find people who are really kind of committed to what you're doing, but if your purpose is front and center and your commitment to how this business is connecting to all these other constituents, I think that's where you can attract really awesome people because they're like, wow, this isn't just a job. This is something more than that. Because I think even, because you said Gen X, there's like, I'm an elder millennial, which is what I like. I refuse to be like just a millennial, like, 'cause I'm like on that weird cusp of being a Gen Xer and certainly relate more to that. But then there's like, the mindset and ideals are very, very different than any of us when we had jobs in our teens or early 20s, for example. And so I find it really kind of fascinating to see what this is going to look like. But it's great to have people like you and companies like yours that are out there having these conversations and being a representative of a bigger B Corp movement, like we were talking about too. So that way there's these opportunities for people to say, wow, there are companies out there that are doing things differently, that there is a better way to do it. And I'm not just a cog in a wheel with no personal fulfillment happening.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think to your examples, I mean, I work obviously with clients across, all, generational spectra. And we're having this conversation about millennials 15 years ago. Right now the conversation's about Gen Z entering the workforce, and Gen Alpha is like already not that far behind. And there again, I see, folks who are my contemporaries and older sometimes falling into the trap of, thinking that these younger generations like just don't have a good work ethic,
Mhm.
or, they don't care enough, they're not motivated enough, they, aren't willing to put in the effort, and learn the ropes before they, get the prize. And again, how do we start from curiosity?
Yeah.
Right? What is it in their lives and experiences that have them say, that's not a bargain I want to sign up for?
Yep.
Right? I mean, how many of them, saw their families dissolve, right? I mean, this generation, has had more divorce rather than less divorce,
Mhm.
right? Have seen all sorts of conflicts. I mean, I grew up in this tiny little window between the Vietnam War and the first Persian Gulf War that felt relatively peaceable in the world. This
Mm,
generation hasn't experienced that, right?
mm-mm.
Like it's been wartime their whole lives,
Yeah.
right? They grew up going through metal detectors in their schools and
Mhm.
hiding under desks and
Mm.
feeling like their school was not a safe place. And
Yeah.
so, what is the deal that they're willing to make
Yeah.
in accepting employment? And what can we learn about better ways of living and leading from their hopes and dreams, right? How do we make space for us to imagine a future that produces different results than the ones that the organizational structures of the last 50 or 100 years have produced?
Yeah. Oh my God. I feel like we could keep going around all of this. This is just such a rich conversation. And so I'm just going to remind people that in the comments, wherever you may be watching this, whatever social media platform you're on, in the comments below, there is a link to access one of Jen's books as a book giveaway. So please, by all means, go ahead and participate in that. Jen, are there any final things that you might want to kind of share as we're kind of wrapping up to a conclusion? Anything I didn't ask you?
No, this has been a really great conversation. I think the only thing I would say for anyone who's out there listening is that I really wrote this book to start a conversation, right? I think that for me, the most important piece of now having the book out in the world is that I get to talk to people about it. That, I'm not sitting behind my laptop and, making sure every sentence is just perfect anymore, because that's not the point, right? As much as I cared about writing a beautiful book, what I care more about is that the ideas are relevant and meaningful and valuable for people. And, that anyone who picks it up might both find some little glimmer of hope, but even more importantly, some practical tool or resource that will help them see how they might take a step in a slightly different direction, or
Yeah.
ask a question that they might not have asked otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I've just put your website scrolling along the bottom. Obviously, people can access all of the integrated work website, but that will bring you to specifically the book page. And Jen's book is available wherever you would like to purchase your book. I am a big fan of bookshop.org. I will continue to promote them. They are also a B Corp. They came, kind of came onto the scene beginning of COVID, and they have really just been inching away into Amazon's market share of just being an online independent bookstore. And the fact that they are a B Corp in and of itself feels, to me, it's like a trifecta. You have Jen's book as B Corp, PYP as a B Corp, go buy the book from another B Corp. It seems like we can create this trifecta together. So, but at the end of the day,
Excellent.
everyone has their personal preference of where they buy books, and the book is available wherever that may be. So please go ahead and do.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Any other ways that you want to direct people to contact you? Or is this good?
No, this is great. I mean, you can find the book just at koanmethod.com. Also, that will just redirect people to the link that you've got here. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, and so folks are welcome to connect with me there. And I just want to appreciate you, Jen, for creating Publish Your Purpose, for having a platform that makes it easy for people like me who have something to say and are looking to bring their work to a broader audience to do it so well and so easily. Thank you so much for your support all along the way.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And I've appreciated this collaboration. It's always just a little extra special when there's that kind of that common component of the B Corp movement, because it's a different conversation is always my experience. So I really appreciate you and all the work that you do in the world. And for everyone else watching, please check out Jen and her work in all of the different places. And I will see you again in the future chatting with somebody else and launching their book. But for now, please support Jen, go do the book giveaway, and I will see you all soon. All right.
Fantastic. Thanks,
Jen.
Jen. Bye-bye.
Bye.